Export Task Force. And we welcome the great turnout. We really appreciate everyone being here today. And as we are gathered once again, our purpose remains steadfast: to explore an extraordinary opportunity to improve our economic landscape and fulfill the promise of our Commonwealth. Our purpose as a task force is to examine obstacles, economic feasibility, economic impact, and security needs involved in creating an LNG export facility for Pennsylvania, as well as identify industry partners who could assist us in this endeavor so that we can ultimately provide a list of recommendations in a report to the Governor and to the General Assembly. In our previous hearings, we've discussed the ecological benefits of transitioning to natural gas and examined safety and security measures when transporting LNG. Today, our focus turns to a topic that resonates deeply with all Pennsylvanians: economic opportunity. Pennsylvania's unique natural gas reserves have the potential to drive economic growth, inspire innovation, and create new opportunities. We recognize the profound impact that a flourishing energy sector can have on our state. It is not only about job creation, but ensuring and resurging industries, revitalizing communities, and empowering our workforce. It's about opening doors for aspiring engineers, skilled laborers, and ambitious entrepreneurs to shape their future, a future that requires sustainable energy. As we navigate these issues, we are privileged to be joined by a diverse panel of experts, each bringing their unique perspective to the table. Through their insights, we will explore the potential economic ripple effects of an LNG export facility and examine how it could reverberate across supply chains, trade partnerships, and local economies. As we have gone about our work, we have ensured and are continuing to ensure that voices from local communities are heard. After receiving feedback from members of the Chester community and from members of our task force, we decided to bring this task force to the City of Chester for our third public hearing. We welcome both proponents and skeptics alike to engage in a robust exchange of ideas. This diversity of thought enriches our discussions, enables us to make well-informed policy recommendations as well. I would like to personally thank Widener University for their hospitality and willingness to host today's hearing. I would also like to extend my appreciation again to all those present, both physically and virtually. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone attending and participating today to do so professionally and respectfully. We are here today to receive testimony from our three panels of testifiers, and I want to stress the importance of allowing each speaker the opportunity to express their thoughts and opinions without interruption. Disrupting the proceedings not only hinders the progress of the discussion, but also detracts from the respectful environment that we aim to foster. Because we have a wide variety of testifiers and task force members who have taken the time to travel to be here in person or join us remotely, I ask that everyone present today to please be respectful and courteous so that we may receive the facts and information necessary to complete our duties as a task force. With that, I look forward to hearing from our testifiers, and let's get started. I call this meeting to order. I would also just like to remind everyone that this hearing is being recorded and live streamed so that the public may watch. If we experience any technical difficulties, we will recess the hearing until those technical difficulties can be addressed. For the testifiers participating virtually, please mute your microphones until it is your turn. And now, at this time, I would just like to go to introductions to the members of the task force that are present in the room to please introduce yourself. We'll start with those on my right side.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Stephanie Wisman with the American Petroleum Institute based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Toby Rice, President and CEO of EQT Corporation, America's largest natural gas producer. We're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
James Snell, Business Manager, Steamfitters Local Union 420, and an affiliate of Philadelphia Building Trades.
I am State Representative Martina White from the 170th Legislative District in Northeast Philadelphia. I serve as the House Republican Caucus Secretary and the Chair of this Philadelphia LNG Export Task Force.
Good morning, Ryan Mulvey from Philport, Director of Government Affairs at Port of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. State Representative Joe Hohenstein from House District 177, which is in Philadelphia. My district has 6 miles of the Delaware River, stretching from the neighborhood of Fishtown all the way up to Tacony, and also Wisconsin and Frankfurt, which is where I live.
Good morning, folks. Madam Chair, Seth Shapiro, President and CEO of Philadelphia Gas Works.
Good morning, Adam Walters. I'm representing Department of Community and Economic Development Secretary
And members who are participating virtually, if you could please introduce yourselves, starting with the representative from DEP.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. Pat Patterson, Regional Director for the Department, representing Secretary Rich Negri.
And Kimberly, if you could introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Kimberly Barrow, representing Chairman Dutraw from the PUC.
And for everyone's edification, we are still expecting Senator Gene Yaw to attend this hearing. He is on his way, so upon his arrival, we will welcome him as well. All right, so we will get started today. We have joining us Carl Morera, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. I'd like to thank you for being here today. And would you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? If so, please indicate by saying, I do.
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, esteemed members of the Philadelphia LNG Export Task Force. I'm Carl A. Morera. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. So we're the statewide nonprofit trade organization representing the people who make things here in the Commonwealth. Everything from Chinook helicopters, just a few minutes from where we are sitting, to iconic Zippo lighters in the northernmost part of our Commonwealth, to steel, glass, plastics, food, candy, and more. Manufacturing in Pennsylvania employs more than 5.5 million jobs on our plant floors, adds more than $101 billion in annual gross state product, and sustains millions of additional jobs in supply chains, distribution networks, and vendors of industrial services. I'm honored to join you today to talk about the potential for an LNG export facility in the Philadelphia area and what it would mean to the economy of the region and the Commonwealth as a whole. Before we get into the specific details of the study, it's important to note that Pennsylvania has missed out on an economy-changing project in this very area in the past. In 2018, Braskem, a Brazilian-based leader in plastic supply chain with American headquarters just a few miles away in Philadelphia, was siting a new plant in the Americas. Marcus Hook was a finalist, but ultimately, the project went to LaPorte, Texas. And it went there because of known delays in necessary infrastructure the plant would need to function, and they did not have the confidence that Pennsylvania policymakers would be able to permit the infrastructure necessary. Pennsylvania lost out on 1,300 construction jobs and nearly 100 full-time manufacturing jobs with other manufacturers would have surely located near the feedstock that product or that plant would have produced. It was the loss of that project that actually led to our investment at the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association to purchase in-plan economic modeling software. My boss, actually, David Taylor, our president and CEO, kind of joked at the time, you can't miss what you never had. But with in-plan, you can. So we use in-plan to see what projects would mean for economies to urge policymakers to work with our many vital industries to ensure manufacturers locate, hire, and expand here in our Commonwealth versus a competitor state. And competitor states are no longer the states that just touch our borders. Business capital and talent is more mobile than it's ever been. And that's why we're excited to present to you, the document that's before you today, including an economic impact study of what an LNG export facility located in Delaware County, Pennsylvania would mean for the county, also for the 5-county region, and Pennsylvania as a whole. Others have shared in past hearings about the importance of LNG in the global marketplace, but it begs repeating. LNG is a fuel source that the world is craving, and which has drastically lowered worldwide emissions in the past 2 decades as more and more power facilities and manufacturing plants are transitioning from coal and oil to cleaner, more efficient natural gas. Every indicator shows that global LNG demand is rising, and with large quantities of natural gas in Pennsylvania, also outlined in the report, we can help supply the world, especially our overseas allies as they seek to disentangle themselves from foreign adversaries such as Russia and Saudi Arabia. For the purposes of the in-plan study, we took the closest LNG export facility, which is Cove Point in Lusby, Maryland, and modeled the construction of the full-time operations of that facility as if it existed in Delaware County or was constructed in Delaware County. A previous economic impact study published by Sage Public Policy Group in Baltimore actually provided us with the imports of what the construction and full-time operations, what they were, because they did a study for the Cove Point facility at the time. We also acquired an estimate of the total amount of natural gas that the facility would use as feedstock per year, and this was added into the model as well. So a little bit about InPlan. InPlan is a regional economic analysis software application that is designed to estimate or impact the ripple effect, specifically backward linkages, of a given economic activity within a specific geographic area through the implementation of its input-output model. By using spending patterns each unique industry deploys, it can predict the indirect and induced jobs in a study area. Indirect jobs and economic effects stem from business-to-business purchases in the supply chain. Induced jobs and economic effects stem from household spending or labor income, savings, and commuter income within those areas. For this model, the construction phase would be estimated to take 4 years. It's important to note that this is just the construction of the facility. This does not include any needed pipeline or other, like road infrastructure, other infrastructure that is needed for this plant. This is just the construction of the walls, the ceiling, the floor, and it actually does not include any of the equipment inside of the facility. So it would actually, the estimates are probably very far under because it's not including that equipment as well. So the construction totals are likely underrepresented. In the study completed by Sage Policy Group, it was found that during the 4 years of construction to build the Cove Point LNG terminal, there was an average of 4,323 construction jobs supported each year. The construction jobs consisted within the following categories: 1,017 environmental and technical services jobs, 3,213 construction of manufacturing facility jobs, and 93 industrial equipment servicing and repair jobs. In 1 year, these 4,323 direct jobs, according to the InPlan economic model, would support an addition of 1,062 indirect jobs and 1,677 induced jobs in the study area. The full analysis is in your packet and includes the top 10 industries by growth percentage, the top 7 direct and indirect jobs, how many of these indirect and induced jobs would be within the 5-county area versus the remaining 62 counties in our Commonwealth, and the totals over the 4 years of the project. So over the 4 years, the construction of the facility would support a total of 28,249 direct, indirect, and induced jobs. This totals more than $2.3 billion in labor income, $2.8 billion in gross state product or value added, and $4.8 billion in total output. Over the 4 years of construction, the tax obligation would be around $527 million in total, with 80 of that going to the state, 390 to federal, and the remaining to local governments. The full-time ongoing operations at the facility consists of 204 industrial gases manufacturing jobs. Because this category does not assume LNG production, A commodity event was added into the model to show the natural gas intake. Based on the industry knowledge of the Cove Point LNG terminal, this facility utilizes a conservative average of 1 billion cubic feet of natural gas feedstock per day. Based on current pricing, the value of this natural gas was added into the model as a commodity event, and the math is shown in your packet. With the 204 industrial gases manufacturing jobs and the commodity event included, the ongoing operations of the plant would directly support the employment of 514 positions. The additional 310 jobs are mainly in the area of natural gas production. These 514 jobs would support 1,280 indirect jobs, again in those business-to-business transactions, and 1,205 induced jobs. Each year, the labor income from these combined 2,999 jobs would total $432.5 million and add $1.5 billion in gross state product with an altogether output of $2.5 billion. Each year the plant is operational. This is not just a snapshot in time. This is not a 4-year project. This would be each year that the plant is in operation. And the monetary totals would likely increase year over year due to inflation. Manufacturing jobs have the greatest multiplier effect of any other industry due to the feedstock required to make the finished good and then the distribution of that good to market. This model shows that through the large number of indirect and induced jobs created. These are high-value jobs in the areas of custom computer programming design, management of companies, truck transportation, and in the medical and in the educational fields. The yearly tax impact from the ongoing operations would amount to $184 million per year, with $52 million to the state, $85 million to the federal government, and the remaining to county and local, again, yearly, each year. In this 5-year if you take a 5-year snapshot, so the 4 years of construction and assuming 1 year of production, the combined total show that this project would support a total of 31,248 jobs, $2.7 billion in labor income earned, $4.3 billion in gross state product, $7.1 billion in total output, and $714 million in tax revenue. In addition to the study, we have outlined 5 policy initiatives that we feel are best to attract and retain an investment of this type. First, permitting reform for pipeline and other critical infrastructure. PA lost significant business investment in the past due to slow and cumbersome processes to connect major end users of natural gas to feedstock via pipelines. Policymakers should prioritize streamlining the permitting process and supporting infrastructure connections to industrial end users to attract new investment. Second is permitting reform for the construction of new manufacturing or commercial facilities. Similar to pipeline infrastructure challenges, manufacturers face backlogs of new construction and expansion permits. PA's land use requirements are far more strict than federal standards, and this should be amended for uniformity and simplicity. Additionally, comprehensive review of all existing regulations should be completed to remove duplicative and/or contradicting regulations. Third, a focus on workforce and training programs. According to IMPLAN, we can actually look at the demographic data of this with the model. 30% of the jobs for this model require a certificate, some college, or an associate's or equivalent degree. In Delaware County, 24% currently possess the needed levels of certification. The public sector needs to assist in identifying the areas of need and expand local best practices to meet the needs of workforce to maximize the number of Pennsylvanians who can work and can benefit from the work of these projects. Fourth, it's a federal issue, but it's worth noting. Amending or providing temporary relief from the Jones Act. That currently the Jones Act requires goods be shipped between U.S. ports be transported on ships that are built, owned, and operated by U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Therefore, American LNG cannot be sent between U.S. ports unless it's on a U.S. flagged carrier. At present, there are no U.S. flagged LNG carriers, and thus no American LNG can be transported from port to port. Relief from the Jones Act is needed to curb foreign LNG imports from being distributed through our U.S. ports for domestic use. And last and most comprehensively, we must enhance Pennsylvania's business competitiveness. The goal of Pennsylvania policymakers should be to make it the smart business decision for employers to locate, expand, and hire here in this Commonwealth rather than in one of our competitor states. This means that we must restrain state spending, enact pro-growth business tax relief, provide limits on lawsuit use, improve the regulatory climate, and ensure that we have a trained workforce. Even though their American headquarters are just minutes down the road in Philadelphia, Braskamp chose Texas over Pennsylvania. Unless we get serious about business competitiveness in all areas, we stand to lose the chance to compete for a project as economy-changing as the one proposed in this economic model. Pennsylvania has an opportunity to shift geopolitical powers of the world by supplying our allies with responsibly sourced LNG to meet global demands. Thank you for your good work on this task force and to help make this a reality. Thank you for your time, and I will do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This in-plan sounds like a really cool program. How did you guys come up with it?
Oh, we do not.
I'm sorry, I'll speak into the mic. Thank you, sir. So in-plan sounds like a pretty cool program. How did you guys come up with it?
So we didn't come up with it at all. This is, so in-plan has been around, I believe, since the late 1970s or early 1980s. It's mainly used by economic development corporations to look at projects and then also to analyze, especially the tax impacts. A lot of times it's used kind of in an opposite way that we use it, to almost develop tax programs and understand when the return on investment would come for those governments through the indirect and induced tax returns within the workforce submitting taxes coming back. So in-plan is it's its own company. They're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. They partner with educational institutions, many government systems, including the U.S. federal government, and I'm sure there's actually probably they work with a number of state governments. They essentially take databases from almost all of the data submitted to the federal government, especially the Department of Labor, Bureau of Statistics, and then normalize it and come up with the algorithms that do the spending patterns between industries, and that's really where the power is. But it's not it's not our program. We do not own it. No, we use it. I got to go to Charlotte for an in-depth training on the program, and there were only about 12 of us, and I was probably the only person from a trade organization that was there for that training.
I'm going to make a request. You're showing us a lot of the final numbers, and I absolutely appreciate that. We need to know where the final results are. But I know with programs like these, it is all based in what are your initial presumptions and what are the initial inputs. Correct. So if we can see the numbers behind the numbers with the full survey and the full study, that would be much appreciated. And I say that because I'm a little concerned that Code Point is your model of comparison. Because Code Point is a particular facility that's sitting in the Chesapeake Bay down in southern Maryland, and it's right literally on a point of land that's pretty far away from most population. I mean, they're not really a large town or anything close by it. And I know it sits on a particular set of land. I think about 140 acres are reserved for the facility itself, and then about another 1,000 are used as sort of buffer areas. And what I would really like to know, because location, we learn that with anything doing real estate. Is there anything even remotely comparable in southeastern PA that was identified that would have that combination of service area? That again, that's one of the concerns we have with any potential siting in southeastern PA. Is I look around and I just don't see the piece of real estate that matches those specifics or those parameters. So I don't know if you were able to do that as part of this.
That's a great question. It's a bit of a catch-22 because what we did, the reason that we chose Code Point, one was proximity. Two, that the main suppliers for the Code Point facility is Pennsylvania Natural Gas. So we were able to obtain all of the numbers necessary to run an economic model and know that our numbers behind the model, the assumptions that we were making, were accurate. And then the model was run and implanted within Delaware County, not in Cobble Point, Maryland. So I don't, or it would be Lusby, Maryland. As far as the feasibility of land surface area, the model does not make assumptions for that. It assumes whatever economic activity that you plug in with the assumptions that you use are feasible. So I mean that is outside of my realm of expertise. That would be more for environmental land impact than economic impact. But if we were to use a hypothetical project, that to me would be actually be making assumptions rather than using something that has actually occurred, and that we can look at the numbers and understand, okay, there were this many jobs in this industry, this many in this industry, this many in this industry, rather than taking something that might be hypothetical and plugging that in, because then that would be making assumptions. So that's why we chose using the Cobble Point inputs.
Representative, the next question will come from Toby Rice.
Carl, thanks for that work. Just to be clear, real quick, the analysis you did would assume a 1 BCF a day facility? That's correct.
Feedstock.
That's correct. So for people's perspective, Pennsylvania produces about 35 BCF a day and has the capability to produce an additional 20 to 30 BCF a day on top of that. LNG will be the pathway for us to do more. You put a lot of real numbers, it sounds really big. I was wondering if you could just sort of summarize the economic impact. You did the construction phase and the maintenance phase. How should we think about it, real simple, the summary of total benefits and taxes?
Yeah, so there are a lot of big numbers, and that's why on the next, I think it's page 9 in your report, there's a project impact kind of map, it's an infographic, and it lists all those really big numbers. Ultimately, what this comes down to is that this means jobs and significant tax revenue for an area of the Commonwealth that desperately needs it. And not only does this part of the Commonwealth desperately need it, but we have foreign allies overseas that are very, very, they're struggling because of the geopolitical nature of what's going on in Russia, in Saudi Arabia. And we have the potential to do something here to sustain 32,000 jobs in Pennsylvania, take a Pennsylvania natural resource where we extract this resource in a cleaner, more environmentally friendly manner than anywhere else in the world, and send it to those allies overseas. Ultimately, that's what this is about. This is about employing good, hardworking Pennsylvanians and making Pennsylvania an actual energy leader on the world stage.
And the opportunity here, I mean, those jobs are going to translate to what will be billions on construction and direct and indirect billions per year during the maintenance of this plant, the operation of the plant. And you said the taxes, how should we think about the tax impact?
So the tax impact, if you look at the total 5 years, like if you were to take a 5-year snapshot, and I'm assuming 4 years for construction and 1 year of operation, the total tax impact would be $714 million in taxes paid. The ongoing taxes, like year over year, for yearly operations, total $183 million.
And that number is just important because the places that would potentially host something like this are going to benefit from those taxes. The question should be for leaders, what is the best use of those dollars? Are there issues within these communities that these places that would benefit from getting cleaned up with these dollars? Last question for me. Not everybody's going to be, welding or working in the manufacturing side. The indirect jobs is really important. That's something that will benefit the entire community. What positions communities can benefit from those should people think about?
So it's the indirect and the induced, and the way that I view indirect and induced are community builders. These are, I mean, and I truly mean it whenever I said at the beginning, these are economy changing or economy sustaining level projects. So, yeah, the direct jobs, and you'll notice in the indirect and induced jobs that are kind of kicked off in the construction phase, that's a little bit less than what the sustained operations from the manufacturing operations are. And that's normal, that's anticipated. But that's because you have both upstream and downstream activity happening in the manufacturing sector, when in the construction phase, those operations are one time, 4 years in nature, and then they go to hopefully what's going to be the next big project. Because a lot of times when you have projects like this, others will follow. And other manufacturers are going to site around where that feedstock is located, or where the access to the natural gas pipeline infrastructure is. So you're going to see economy-sustaining projects around this. So the way that I would look at those induced and the indirect jobs are truly what sustains, what makes whole communities here in our Commonwealth.
The next task force member with questions is Jim Snell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Carl, thanks for that report. A lot of numbers there. I'm a jobs guy.
I'm not a math person. trust me.
So I'm going to ask you if you have that in front of you, or if you're aware, like, how does, when you break down all them jobs, like you mentioned about 43 or 4,400 jobs, granted that was Cove Point, I get that, but roughly, when you talk about building trade jobs, how many laborers would you expect to be on a project of this significance? Electricians, steam fitters, things of that nature.
Right, so, and that's what's really difficult about, this is one of the limitations of it. So, there's a classification system called NAICS, it's a North American industrial classification system. And there are probably close to 3,000 different job codes. Implant has 526. So they have to, for the reasons, for the way the algorithms work and just the massive amount of data that it is, they have to kind of combine some of those and normalize them. So the biggest input for this was the construction of manufacturing facility jobs. And that, if you look at the breakdown, and I'm happy to send you what that breakdown is, there's a table that will take all of the NAICS codes that are used for the implant code. So if we can connect after this and I can send you that, but it's the exact jobs that you just rattled off.
And if I could, kind of following up on Toby's question in regards to indirect jobs, does that include, like, say, the local pizza shop, the
Yes.
local bakery, the hoagie shop?
So those would be in the induced category. Some in indirect, because there would be some business to business there when businesses buy food, beverages, lunches, those types of things. But that's mainly in the induced jobs. And in fact, I believe that restaurants were included in that. Yeah, retail. In the indirect, retail, food and beverage stores was 7th on the list. Limited service restaurants was 5th. Full service restaurants 4th. So yeah, those are all there.
Thanks, Carl.
The next task force member that has a question is Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to, based on your presentation, there are thousands of jobs, several thousand jobs, if I did the math really quickly, that you were doing. And there's several billion, I think it's approaching almost 10 billion in economic impact. To your knowledge, is there any other manufacturing business of that magnitude looking at this area to come here and do business?
At this area.
You talked a little bit about the tax base, and one of the numbers you gave was $714 million. What's that? I don't know.
So that would be, that was the 5-year total of all of the taxes paid during the 4 years of construction and 1 year of operation.
What type of taxes?
So it includes all state, local, and federal taxes.
You mean
So,
like income taxes and
Correct.
business privilege, those
yep,
things?
all of those are included. On page 8, it actually breaks down the tax impacts of the yearly operations, and there you'll see sub-county, sub-county special, county, state, federal, and then a total.
Okay, well, I still have a question about that. And then you mentioned 183 million is the annual tax impact.
Year over year with the sustained operations of the facility, yes.
Is that personal taxes or is?
So that would include the personal income taxes of the employees working at the facility. That would include the corporate net income tax, if that was a C Corp. That would include whether if that was an LLC, it would be at the 3.07 rate. It takes how all the companies that are included or all of the industries that are included within that study area are incorporated and assumes a tax. It's not going to be perfect, but it is certainly a major impact.
Yeah, I understand that. But do any of these taxes involve real estate?
Yes.
So that's included in the 183 million?
So that would probably, the real estate taxes would likely be under the actual purchasing of that facility, and those numbers we would not be aware of. The main tax impacts here, what we're talking about, are the taxes that are kicked off from the economic activity of the jobs and the revenue of the gross state product.
Well, what I'm concerned about is that there's got to be a significant real estate tax, right?
I wouldn't be able to account for.
Could you compare it though to similar price or similar operations, or I don't know, but I don't know what the tax rate is in this area, but bottom line is this: whatever your real estate taxes are, if it's the same as throughout the rest of the state, approximately 2/3 of the real estate taxes go to the school district.
Right.
So this facility, it would seem to me, would have a tremendous impact on the revenue that went to the school district.
Yes. So of the facility, I'm not positive. It will account for some of the household spending and the jobs within the area. So for the school district, that would be sub-county special in the charts. You'll see sub-county general, sub-county special, county, state, federal, and the total. Sub-county special, that includes mostly school district tax.
Okay, well, if there's any way you give
That's a great suggestion.
some numbers or some good estimates about real estate taxes, and especially the amount going to the school district, that would be very helpful.
I have a note. Thank you, Senator.
All right, thank you.
The next task force member with a question is Seth Shapiro.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Carl, for your testimony. At PGW, we're really focused on getting into the nuances of the jobs we create. So we track the demographics of the workforce, and we also track the geographic location of the workforce. And I noticed that in terms of the indirect and induced, you break them out by county, but the directs, obviously they're all on-site or manufacturing, but do you have any way of estimating how many of those jobs accrue to folks who live in the location, or what the demographics of that workforce would be? Is there any way of looking at Cove Point or other projects or other things in Pennsylvania to estimate that?
So I think maybe the best way to do that would be that each county within in-plan has the demographics, or especially on things like educational attainment. And that is probably the best indicator of where those jobs kind of could be coming from in the area. As I indicated, Delaware County does not currently have the certifications needed of the local workforce in order to do all of the work here. It's close, but certainly more work would need to be done with different training programs in order to meet that need. The best thing to do would probably be to break out county by county what those attainment levels are and what the needs are within the county. But you're right, we do kind of have to assume, especially on the direct jobs, just the way the model works, that those direct jobs are coming from within the county. But the direct jobs are actually at the lowest total It's the induced and the indirect that are actually much, much higher totals. And it is accounting for those degree certificate programs amongst those indirect and induced jobs. So I think maybe a county by county breakdown would be something that we could certainly include and provide.
All right. Stephanie has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carl, thanks so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. Quite an impressive report presented to us today. And I wanted to underscore a couple of things on the policy recommendations having to do with permitting reform. 2 out of the 5 policy recommendations that you have put before us have to do for the need of permitting reform, not only for the pipeline to get the feedstock to such a LNG export facility, but for the facility itself to get constructed. So would you agree that without permitting reform in these 2 areas, we would likely not see a facility of this magnitude in the state?
I mean, all we have to base that off of is past precedent. And the Brascan project was cited in news releases that they did not have the confidence that they would be able to get the infrastructure in place because of red tape roadblocks. So based on past precedent, I think that that's a fair assumption.
Thank you very much. That's all, Madam Chair.
All right. Seeing no further questions for. Yes, Representative Bowman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just make one quick point. Mr. Morera made some commitments to providing some additional, I think, to the...
Those will be provided to the entire task force upon receipt.
But do we know, if I could ask them, when do you think you might be able to provide this to us?
Is 2 weeks fair?
2 weeks is fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, thank you very much, Carl. We're going to call up our next testifier. Zulaine Mayfield, would you please come to the front here? Please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? If so, please indicate by saying, I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Welcome to our city. I'm sure that it is the first time most of you have been into our beautiful community. Finally, you have come to hear what community people in the community that you've been talking about for months and months and months finally has representation at the table, so that we can speak and you can hear us clearly as to the desires of what we desire for our community. We are the masters of our fate. No one else, nobody from Williamsport, no legislators from Philadelphia. We are the residents, and we will determine what goes on in our community. At first, on the onset, I was asked to put into the record testimony from Fermin Morales, and I will read that statement first, and then I will go into my testimony. I'm speaking for Fermin Morales as an electrician and member of IBEW Local 98, who has resided in North Philadelphia practically all of my life. I'm saddened by the leadership of unions who claims to be progressives but lack so much of it. For many years, the building trades practiced the exclusion and outright discrimination of people of color. As the years go by, there have been few progressives in their ranks. As of today, it seems not much has changed. Now the discrimination will be of the environmental form, which will ravage our neighborhoods. The union leadership should be visionaries and revolutionary in their thoughts and actions. Was nothing learned from the derailment incident of East Palestine, Ohio? Instead of falling for another scheme that may put money in the pockets of certain few, they should look at the overall picture of the damage that LNG will bring to the community of Chester, especially communities of color, whether black, brown, or destitute white folks who can't move away and live elsewhere. They should look into the real dangers of LNG as a fossil fuel. Climate change is real. Setting up an LNG facility in our neighborhoods would bring spills, possible explosions, and contamination, on top of the damage already being done to our air quality and atmosphere. Our gas extraction as well. As a Puerto Rican and living beside black, brown, and my Puerto Rican brethren, no one wants LNG in their neighborhoods. Having family and friends in Puerto Rico, they neither are interested in receiving LNG because this is where some of it would be shipped to continue our enforced dependency as a colony when there are better, safer, cleaner, more affordable energy alternatives. There is a movement in Puerto Rico towards renewable energy with our own natural resources that includes the sun and wind. The ideal that we were not allowed to speak at this task force previously in April on issues of safety and security, that matter is a testament that you have no interest in what the communities most impacted have to say.
Amen.
Manufactured consent is not consent. We have a right to dissent on issues that matter to us who are democratic in the way we go about things. Renewables are now cheaper than coal, and LNG and renewables have been a creator of jobs tenfold compared to fossil fuels, including LNG. I asked esteemed bidders union leadership and membership they ever heard of geothermal energy, because that is where your union's future may lie. Furthermore, ExxonMobil knew that the earth was warming since the late 1950s and never reversed course because profits matter more than people. And if there is a catastrophe that occurs, corporations don't go to jail because they are not people. They will simply get a slap on their wrist as the climate keeps warming and we sooner or later become climate refugees because of your recalcitrant behavior. Sincerely, Vernon Morales, electrician, IBEW Local 98, for Philly Broadcast, a community organization.
Thank you very much for that. I just want to remind the audience to please remain courteous to our testifiers. We need to, I would like to be able to move through this smoothly, and if we could not have any delays, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you kindly. Go ahead with your testimony.
You know, I first want to have to say this, you know, I'll read my testimony and then I'll get into what I want to say, my commentary. To the members of the Pennsylvania Liquefied Natural Gas Task Force, Martina White Chair, good morning. Thank you, members of the PA Task Force, for finally giving Chester community an opportunity to speak here today. Welcome to this city of Chester, rich in history, where Pennsylvania began. I am Zulene Mayfield. I am the chairperson of the very mighty Chester Residents Concerned for Quality Living in the city of Chester. We call ourselves Circle. Circle was formed in 1992 by residents and continues to be governed by a coalition of volunteer residents and allies throughout the United States of America and abroad. Chester, PA is the oldest city in Pennsylvania. It is the only city in Delaware County. Founded originally as a safe haven for Quakers, once the hub of Chester industry, many were able to build their wealth off of Chester's economy. Wealth is still being built in Chester. Now only it is the price and the cost of our health, our homes being devalued, and our quality of life being diminished. The city of Chester houses the largest waste incinerator in the United States. They mass burn 3,500 tons of trash per day. Over 98% of the trash originates from outside of the city of Chester. It is being trucked or railed in from other towns, cities, and states, including the city of alleged brotherly love, Philadelphia, as far away as from Puerto Rico, Ohio, and New York. Only 1.8% of the incinerator's capacity to burn is originated from the city of Chester. So we suffer for everybody else's comfort. We also, in addition to a trash incinerator, we house Delaware, a sewage treatment facility. They also incinerate sludge, and it sits right next door to the incinerator. So literally every time somebody flushes their toilet in Delaware County, the ish literally comes to Chester. Once again, we suffer because of other people's comfort. And I might say, we suffer because we are a black and brown community. Yeah. And we suffer that sit in more affluent communities outside of the city of Chester. Delaware County is the fourth most affluent community in Pennsylvania. And Chester is one of the poorest. Exposure to the toxic emissions from these facilities has led to unequally high levels of asthma, respiratory diseases, cancers, and other environmental illnesses that residents have suffered for decades. The American Lung Association consistently rates our air quality either a D or an F. Particularly suffering are our children. 38.5% of our children are asthmatics. That means they cannot breathe. That means that is lost time from school. That means that is hospital visits. There's also an economic component to that. If you are a parent, you must leave your job. If your child or you have an asthmatic incident. That is an economic cost that is not being tracked. So now to the matter at hand, the plan to bring an LNG to the city of Chester. By the very makeup of this committee, with representation from Philadelphia, representation from Williamsport, representation from the gas and fracking industries, representation from the state. You have union representation, and etc. What is missing from this committee is any representation of our governance from Delaware County. In the county that would be most affected. This committee is stacked with individuals that would have the most to benefit financially from a proposal such as this. This LNG task force has not allowed public testimony from community scientific experts and others that would enhance the education of the legislators. In my opinion, the report would not be a true reflection of all affected parties on all issues. Never before has Philadelphia included Delaware County in any sort of economic regional development plan. But now you want to do something. Why? Is this an attempt to keep this gasification plant out of Philly? My understanding is that Philadelphia wants no parts of this facility. It was rejected 3 times. If this is such an economical plus for communities. Why aren't members, task force legislators, fighting tooth and nail to have it and have that economic development in their communities? Why would you deny your communities all of this wealth? Make me understand that. Every community wants to be economically, every community wants to be healthy, every community wants to reap the benefits of all this economic growth. And I'm not understanding why the legislators that are on this committee aren't fighting for it. Why would you deny your constituents all of these benefits? Write your report as you will, but there are a whole lot of people in Delaware County, which includes the city of Chester. You know, in Delaware County, we have a saying, we are Delco strong. That means a lot of different things. I am glad to see that our Delaware County Council did issue a response to this task force. I think that it was disrespectful to come into this community today and not acknowledge the governance of which we sit under. There have been many attempts to have people speak on this committee, and they were essentially shot down by the chairperson who makes those decisions. But that's okay. That's okay. So the plan is underway for PEN America. We all know that it's PEN America. Let's stop playing the games. To bring a liquid action plan to Chester. Repeatedly, committee members, including the chair, stated that Chester specifically has been targeted for an LNG by PEN America. So to try and state that Chester isn't the target, it's not being honest, and it's not being open with the public. Proposed, it would be the largest LNG terminal on the East Coast. Chester is 5 miles. 5 miles with roughly 33 to 36,000 people, a very densely populated area. The Elba Island LNG sits on 840 acres of land. The Calcasieu, and I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, Pass, another comparable LNG, sits on 1,000 acres of land. Cove Point sits on 1,000 acres of land. Yet PEN America has proposed to you all that they intend to produce just as much as 2 of these other LNG facilities. And they're going to do it on 100 acres of land.
Make it make sense.
It don't make no sense. They have given you a proposal where PEN America would create a buffer for this community. However, the buffer would be in displacing homes, businesses, and churches. 805 homes to be exact, 4 churches, a daycare, and numerous businesses, and in fact, possibly the local 413 building. We are not making these figures up. We didn't put with, first of all, that's not what I do, and that's not what Sophie does. Our facts are correct. These are facts that were provided to you all from PEN America LNG as part of their proposal. So either they're not going to have a buffer zone, which is an issue, and or they're going to have a buffer zone by taking the very thing that our state rep Kazim told you that we were in need of, which is affordable housing. So you're going to take away housing, you're going to take away the established businesses that are already operating in our city and have been for years. You're going to take away our houses of worship and a damn daycare. We say no. the perspective of the community. We are not anti-capitalist. We are pro-survivalist. And we will survive any decision that you all, are trying to make about our lives and the lives of our children and the survival of our community. Do we need economic development? Years ago, the older people used to say, all money is not good money. And we will not accept this money. And we will not tolerate this money. So Local 420, steam fitters unions, God bless you, educated, y'all in the greater Northeast Philly. You should be advocating for Martina White, of who you contribute to that. You should be advocating that she make sure to get up there with y'all. That's what should happen.
Zerlene, I just want to ask you to please do not impugn the motives of the task force members.
I'm not
here.
impugned, I'm saying facts.
I'm just.
These are facts.
Let's just be respectful. And
Is it not a fact that he's a high contributor to you?
Ma'am,
Okay.
again, I
We'll
just
put
want
it
to
out there. I
Please
agree.
be
That's
respectful.
why we're not gonna blame you. It cannot be done. I will speak the facts as they stand. Okay? We have to understand, hold on y'all. We have to understand the motivations and the people who have teeth in the game to make sure that this thing is trying to be cited in the city of Chester. We are not anti-capitalist. Every day, Pennsylvania extracts their fracking material out of its grounds. Every day it's shipped to Texas and Louisiana. So don't come telling us that this is the only way. That poor little old us in the city of Chester who have nothing to gain from this. Nothing. Are going to be the saviors of the world. We got one job. We are our capital. And we will protect ourselves. No matter what. That is our job. That is our desires for this community are not unlike any other community. We want to live cleanly. We want to live safely. We want to provide education for our children. We want to own and buy our homes. And we want to be at peace. Because of the assaults and the environmental genocide that has been conducted on this community. Are we angry? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you all talk in terms of statistics. We know these statistics. 2 weeks ago, I buried my cousin at 51 years of age from prostate cancer. The same week we buried him, I got word that a 43-year-old man died from brain cancer. I know 30-year-olds in this community that had been double mastectomies because they have breast cancer. 30 years of age. 30 years of age. The APM talking about the abstract figures, we know the figures. We know the figures that PEN America has put out on their own prospectus. They're talking about from the year 2023 to the year 2043 that they would produce $13 million in revenue for the city of Chester. The other day, I heard a hearing, they were talking about 30, 40 million. So where's the lie at? This is their documentation. You talking $700,000, $600,000 for 20 years? Never mind. We'll have none of that. And more importantly, let me make this clear. Our bodies, the health of our community will not be prostituted for pollution, for no LNG, for no incinerator. Your money, we don't need it. We're okay.
Thank you
somewhere
very
else.
much. We're going to have Stephen Brooks, City Councilman. If you could please provide us with your testimony today, we would greatly appreciate it.
Greetings to the Philadelphia LNG Export Task Force, Chair White. Welcome to Chester. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this important hearing. I am City Councilperson, Chester City Councilperson Stefan Roos. There are 35,000 reasons I don't want a liquefied natural gas export facility operating in Chester. As a Chester elected official, I take public health and public safety very seriously for the 35,000 residents I represent here. Considering an LNG plant in densely populated Chester concerns me and many of us for several reasons. We've got a history here in Chester with industry that isn't very flattering. Let me take you down a little walk of memory lane. In the late 70s and early 80s, we watched the Wade dump site go up in flames. Fortunately, the winds didn't blow in the direction of the Pico natural gas holding tank across the fence line. Chester would have been blown to smithereens if that was the case. In the 90s, Chester saw the arrival of an incinerator built to burn 3 times as much trash as Delaware County collects. Today, the incinerator operates under old EPA regulations that are far below what would have been permitted if the incinerator was built today. That ain't right. Now in the 2020s, we're here discussing the possibility of bringing an LNG plant to Chester. From what I'm reading and what came across my desk, the last time the federal government wrote EPA regulations for LNG was 1980. Chester's history from the incinerator proves that if LNG regulations are updated sometime in the future, those new regulations will have no bearing on the Chester LNG facility being designed right now to meet 1980 pollution standards. New polluting industries are not welcome in Chester. The health and safety of Chester residents have been compromised by local industry for too long. What we don't want is to have to breathe a new batch of particulate matter. NOx, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfuric acids, and naturally occurring radioactive materials from the LNG plant because our residents are sick. We exceed in every measurable health disparity. Asthma, birth defects, COPD, infant mortality, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and a shorter life expectancy. To make matters worse, Chester doesn't have a single, this one finger here, a single primary care doctor left in the city to treat our citizens. However, Chester's geographic assets are perfectly suited for attracting population growth. LNG will discourage new investment in homes and businesses. An LNG terminal will result in population depletion. Who would take the risk to move to a small city with a big LNG export terminal down the street? This is clearly a NIMBY situation, not in my backyard. The irony to all this is that LNG wants to occupy Chester's front yard. The waterfront is Chester's most attractive and valuable undeveloped asset. Let's be real. Chester's industrial age has aged out. Our new vision for the city is to move on from our industrial past. It's time to create Chester 2.0 and reimagine our waterfront. I envision the riverfront will become home to exciting new businesses, entertainment, and recreational options. Let's look at Camden. How about residential growth? Let's look at Wilmington. I'm compelled to issue a warning, and this is not a threat but a warning, to anyone who thinks Chester will not put up a fight to prevent predatory people, businesses, or industries selecting here. here's just a few things that you should know. Voters voted out city leaders who see Chester's largest polluters as friendly business partners. A real partnership is forming between city, county, state, and federal elected officials to create a new Chester. Chester wants to stop predators from devaluing our assets. Just because we have a river doesn't mean you can use it to put our public safety and public health at risk. Just because all roads come through Chester doesn't mean we welcome your truck traffic destroying our roads. Just because you need a blast zone doesn't mean you can force families from their generational households by wiping their neighborhoods off the map. It is time, and it's really past time for Chester to cash in on our geographical assets and not sell out to industries like LNG export terminals that should locate where there's abundant open space to operate safely, not force yourself into dense urban areas populated by 35,000 people. We would really love to believe that you are guided by the same moral imperatives that we are, and that we share the same sense of responsibility for the health and welfare of the Chester community. But by proposing to locate an LNG export facility in Chester proves to us that you are not. The days are over where you will target an oppressed population who may appear to not have the knowledge,
Councilman, I must say,
information.
again, speaking to the task force and having ascertaining motives of these task forces. Everyone being more respectful of the task force coming all the way to Chester to hear what you have to say. However, we will not equally impunity. And I appreciate your time and ability to be respectful.
We're not going to give them that opportunity because they don't want to be here. So let's keep them here as long as we can. We will be respectful and quiet.
Chester's new leaders, along with our engaged and empowered residents, demand to be listened to and respected. We will not allow an LNG export facility to exacerbate our health outcomes or derail us from restoring greatness back to Chester. I can't help but to compare Lahaina, Maui to Chester. The tragic fire spread to an area the same size of Chester where we already have freight trains coming through our city carrying liquefied gases to and from the refineries and could instantly destroy city blocks if they ignite.
Speak the truth.
Chester also has miles of underground pipelines carrying explosive gases and oils. There's no way we would support taking on an even greater risk that an LNG export facility brings. In closing, if you'd like to sit with me to discuss how a $3 billion investment in Chester should be used to revolutionize this city without putting our public safety and public health at risk, I'll happily make myself available for that meeting. Anything short of that is a no from me on LNG.
Thank you. At this time, the task force member, Toby Rice, has a question for the panel.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking to us about your concerns. I think in this room, there's a lot of people that are outraged based on the safety of their communities. And I think there's also people in this room that are outraged because of the safety of our planet and emissions. I do believe that facilities, like LNG facilities, are the key towards having a safer planet and a safer facility. That statement is going to be very contrary to, I think, the understanding a lot of people have in this room. How long have you been fighting this incinerator and trying to shut it down?
We have been formed, we were formed in 1992. We We have not only bought the incinerator, we have bought 3 proposals that want to come and burn tires in our community. We also bought the largest autoclaver of chemotherapeutic infectious medical waste. We also bought off the biggest pet crematory in the country that wanted to come to the city of Chester. We bought off 2 companies that were here burning contaminated soil. So we bought a lot. But let me tell you, none of those things are in existence.
Yeah, and my point is, the incinerator has been challenged for a long time.
The average length of the people in Detroit close their incinerator at year 30. The people in Connecticut close theirs in year 33. We are well on track, and you can believe me, that incinerator will close.
Evelyn, I want to tell you what outrages me is that we're burning garbage in this country to create electricity. It's not just happening in Chester, it's happening in all places around this country. There's other communities that struggle with the same issues that you do. And around the world, it's an even bigger issue. The way we replace this is to have better energy.
Yeah, well, listen, we're not saying you can't replace it. You are a multi-millionaire. You are tied. What they say, your bread is butter with LNG. That's how you earn your living. That's how you take care of your family. You have no idea what we are dealing with in the city of Chester. Your children aren't exposed to that. You are a millionaire. So you would be pro LNG. And we don't begrudge you for that. That's how you earn your living. But what we are telling you is the same way you are focused on earning a living, you can take that and magnify that by 10,000. That's how focused we are on making sure that our children have the same opportunities to breathe.
We share the same arguments. These type of things should not happen. And for the record, I made my money, I retired, I don't need to be doing this. The reason I do it is because I want to help the planet, I want to help provide energy security for the world, and we want to have situations like this where we have absurd things happening in this community, in this world, to provide better opportunities. That was just my point that I wanted to make. These type of facilities, does it fit in Chester County? That's a conversation that needs to be had.
We're in Delaware County. It's a common mistake. It's a common mistake.
These are the questions that need to be, these are the discussions we need to have, but I don't even think we're at that point on saying, can something fit in Chester? Is this an opportunity that is going to be valued and create value for the societies, and make sure that the cons that we're doing something that is safer and well received. These facilities are going to get built in this country, and in this world. It doesn't need to be here. These will get built. It doesn't need to be here. There will be communities that will embrace the opportunities, that will understand the risks. But we do need to understand that there are benefits from this. This is an opportunity to eliminate one of the biggest issues that's facing this community. It could help. Just want to make sure we have an open mind when we're talking about this.
Numbers are numbers and figures are figures. We understand 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4. We can add and count. And what I'm telling you, for the economics proposals that Penn America has put forth, you're talking about $13 million in 20 years. Do you know what other things we could develop for our community that would generate more than $13 million in 20 years? Trust me, we have now the political will to do it. We are not unintelligent people. We are visionaries. And we're telling you that this proposal does not meet our vision for what we have for our community. You are a millionaire. If you want to, I will gladly sit down with you and give you a list of proposals that you can fund since you want to do some damn good for the community. You and I can be best buds, but you will never convince me that an LNG in Chester should happen. The same way I won't be able to convince your wife for her ass to move next door to one. Okay?
Thank you very much for your testimony today. We're going to move on to our next panel of testifiers. And thank you very much for everyone for being here today. We have one more testifier. Please introduce yourself virtually for the task force members that are here today.
Hello everyone, my name is Neil Chatterjee. I'm a former commissioner and chairman of the United States Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. FERC is the government agency with the responsibility for evaluating applications for liquefied natural gas export facilities. My objective today is to speak to the task force to give a broad overview of the process, which is a very thorough one that FERC undertakes when evaluating these types of applications. I will point out what FERC looks at when reviewing these proposals, what the necessary components of an application need to be in order to have a chance of success. Point out the diligence that goes on and what the analysis goes into the process, and walk through the other agencies that are involved as well as the legal process. I think I'm sorry that I'm unable to be there in person, but in watching the previous discussion, I can sense the passion that people have, the concerns that they have, and I want folks in the community to get an understanding of how rigorous this process really is, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to the task force.
Thank you very much.
And I can go ahead and
Yep, you can proceed with your testimony.
Okay. So
Actually, hold on one second. I'm sorry, sir. I have to swear you in before you provide your testimony.
Oh, okay.
Could you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? If so, please indicate by saying, I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
So, FERC's authority in evaluating applications for liquefied natural gas export facilities comes from the Natural Gas Act, which was passed by Congress and signed into law. The Natural Gas Act requires companies wanting to export U.S. natural gas to obtain an authorization. The law is bifurcated. FERC has authority over construction and operation of the export facility. The Department of Energy has authority over the molecules, and FERC is the lead agency under NEPA, the environmental statute. Applicants seeking approval must enter into a mandatory pre-filing period at FERC. This process can last several months, and most often takes up to a year. During this pre-filing process, applicants submit resource reports and work closely with the FERC career staff. There's a lot of give and take. There's no formal adjudication at this point in the process within the rules. Applicants then submit requests for a formal filing through a written submission. FERC reviews that and can accept the application, and at that point, the formal review process begins with adjudication and ex parte rules. The ex parte rules are significant because what they basically spell out is that the commissioners and staff cannot engage in conversations with parties who are in favor of a project or opposed to the project. And if in fact there is any communication, all of that communication must be documented in the record so that all parties to an application, those who want it and those who oppose it, know what interaction is taking place with the commission. Other interested parties, for instance, environmental NGOs, safety groups, health groups, can request intervention status in a FERC LNG export application, and FERC has historically always granted these interventions. The agency sets a NEPA schedule, and then the applicant pays a third-party FERC-approved entity to prepare the draft environmental impact statement. So it is not done by the applicant, and it is not done by the commission. Once the environmental impact statement is done, there are public meetings near the project site and a formal comment period. After that period closes, the comments are reviewed by FERC staff and summarized for all to see. Applicants can respond to those comments. Throughout this period, FERC can ask questions to the applicant which they have to respond to. And as I stressed earlier, the applicant cannot have any off-the-record conversations with commissioners or staff. They have to be written and on the record only. After this very rigorous process is completed, the agency can prepare a final environmental impact statement and then make it public. When this NEPA process is completed and all the questions are answered, staff then prepares a draft. The draft order is submitted to all of the commissioners. When fully staffed, FERC has 5 commissioners, no more than 3 that can come from one political party. Because I want to be very clear here, this is an important distinction. FERC is an independent agency. The chair does not report to the President of the United States or to the Energy Secretary. Each commissioner is independent and has their own authority, and it is a bipartisan configuration so that there are always members from both political parties represented on the commission, and you need a majority of the commissioners to approve an order. The orders are generally announced at a public monthly open meeting. FERC meets 11 months out of the year on the 3rd Thursday of each month, with the exception of August, and those meetings are open to the public to attend and are available online. So the public is very well aware of what the commission is doing and what the various parties are when they're considering these orders. There is a very stringent standard of review. Projects deemed by law to be in the public interest unless FERC finds that approval would be inconsistent with the public interest. This public interest determination is a significant one as we weigh all of these considerations, many of which are being raised today before the task force in making that public interest determination. Commissioners can concur in the majority opinion or issue separate concurrences or dissents. After the order, those who have become interveners can request a rehearing of the order. So if an order is granted and an application is moving forward, interveners who oppose the project can petition for rehearing. That can take a few months, or it can drag out. There was a particular rehearing order for a couple of LNG projects that lasted almost 20 months. Overall, counting pre-filing, the FERC review process takes 3 years or more and costs tens of millions of dollars. It is not inexpensive, and it is not without its rigor. Even after the FERC process is completed, there can be court challenges. FERC LNG decisions go to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, and decisions are routinely challenged. Now, precedents have favored FERC because FERC works very, very hard to make sure that its orders are legally durable. LNG applications have a different standard of review and different case law than gas pipelines. Court reviews can take years, but normally the project can proceed unless the court says otherwise. In the recent case I mentioned, 2 Brownsville, Texas projects were remanded for further FERC climate and environmental justice review, and that agency additional review in response to the court took nearly 2 years. And then finally, the Department of Energy, as I mentioned, plays a key role here. DOE has jurisdiction over the export of the molecules. The molecules destined for free trade agreement nations approved are automatically and without delay for these free trade nation agreements. Molecules to non-FTA nations fall under the same Natural Gas Act standards as FERC. There has to be a public interest determination unless DOE finds otherwise. Projects won't proceed until full Department of Energy authorization for both free trade agreement and non-free trade agreement countries. Until that is granted, projects can't proceed. You have the same kind of thorough review process at DOE. The agency defers to FERC generally for NEPA and waits until FERC's order and rehearing are settled before it takes its action. DOE usually acts pretty quickly, and this has been consistent across both Republican and Democrat administrations. And those DOE decisions can also be challenged administratively or in court, although historically court precedents, like for FERC, also favor DOE. I say all this to just demonstrate to stakeholders in the room today who have concerns about how significant this process is, how much goes into it, how much scrutiny these applications, which sometimes can run 40 or 50,000 pages, how much information has to be covered, how much gets put into the environmental review and into the safety process. It's a serious effort that FERC, an independent agency, not subject to politics, undertakes. And so I want stakeholders who have their concerns to understand the agency listens and pays attention and really does heavily scrutinize these projects. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide this overview today, and I welcome any questions.
Representative Hohenstein.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee, for coming, virtually coming. It's good to hear from you. I have a few questions on process, and then I also want to ask you some questions about experience with specific projects. First of all, how many commissioners are there again?
When the commission is at full strength, there are 5. Today, there's currently 1 vacancy, so there are 4 commissioners.
When you referred to a standard for the decision-making in the public interest, and you stated that each project application is presumed at first to be in the public interest unless and until FERC decides it is not, or that they haven't met the burden. Is that correct?
There's no presumption. The agency does a detailed analysis. We make sure that applicants satisfy environmental requirements, satisfy safety requirements, and also demonstrate that there is a market for the commodity. There was a project that had been previously rejected back in 2016 because it was found that there wasn't sufficient offtake, and the commission wasn't going to authorize domestic construction of an LNG export facility that it couldn't demonstrate need. There's a lot that goes into that public interest determination.
But the burden of proof eventually is on the applicant, and is there a legal standard for that burden of proof?
Yes, it is on the applicant, and the legal standard is set out in the Natural Gas Act, and commissioners each individually weigh in casting their vote whether they believe the project to be in the public interest or not. A majority vote is needed. A majority of commissioners must say that they feel the project is in the public interest and has met that burden. When there are instances where there are commissioners who believe that that public interest determination has not been met, they are free to vote against the project and author dissenting opinions. Oftentimes, interveners rely upon those dissenting opinions when challenging the commission's determination.
I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer, so I guess what I'm asking is, the burden of proof, is it preponderance of the evidence? Is it clear, convincing? Is there a higher level of burden of proof? Is that set by either practice or by regulation or statute?
I don't want to misspeak here. I think I understand your question. I guess the burden of proof is on the applicant, and then ultimately, though, it is up to the members of the commission to make their judgment as to whether that burden has been.
Okay, thank you. So I want to ask real specifically on one particular project that's been brought up as a potential example here is the Cove Point project. Were you with FERC as that project was being reviewed?
I was not. Cove Point, from my recollection, I believe, had been approved and operational prior to my taking my seat on the commission in August of 2017.
Okay. Are you familiar with that project or familiar with any other project that would be of a similar size to the one that we're considering here?
I'm not as familiar with Cove Point, again, as I did not, to my recollection, participate in any significant components of that decision-making process, but we did consider a number of projects during my tenure at the commission, more than a dozen. And so, I've seen a wide array of projects, from smaller projects to pretty significant ones during my time.
So one of the features that I've noticed as I've looked at different projects is there's both an operational field, which can sometimes be somewhere around 100 or sometimes more acres of land where the facilities specifically are sited. But then there is also a buffer or other space that serves a safety function for surrounding communities. Do you know of any facility that was ever approved, either before your time or during your time or since, that had the type of footprint that this particular site we're seen to be being told, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 acres, and then it's not clear exactly how much the buffer will be, but if land is seized with imminent domain, it may be as much as 800 or 1,000 acres in addition, but that would require significant land to be seized. Right now, the operational field is 100 acres. Do you know of any facilities that received permitting and function in that type of a footprint?
I don't recall the specifics well enough to know, comparable footprints. What I will say is that FERC works in coordination with PHMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, to ensure that communities are protected. And so while I can't speak to specific acreage and the size of buffers, I can provide stakeholders assurance that it's not just FERC, it's FERC working in conjunction with PHMSA to make sure that communities are safe.
Thank you. One final question, Chair, if you'll indulge. Long-term health impacts, where do they factor into these different factors, both pluses and minuses? Are there long-term health impact studies that are done as part of the FERC process, or is it more strictly immediate safety and environmental and economic factors that you mentioned.
The commission has, particularly in recent years, been really focused, particularly on environmental justice, on environmental justice communities, and in making sure that the wealth and well-being, the health and well-being of people in those communities is considered when making these decisions. That and project sponsors often themselves work very closely with communities to ensure that there are not only economic benefits to those communities, but that residents in those communities understand that their health and well-being is taken seriously and is prioritized by project applicants in this process. It is a very thorough process.
Thank you.
The next task force member that has a question is Toby Rice. You're recognized.
Commissioner, thanks for being here. Could you just spend a little bit more, to put a little bit more detail on how the FERC checks for the safety considerations of the project when it comes to siting?
I mean, again, it's very thorough, and I want to be clear, this isn't, the commissioners, these are career staffers. This is what they do for a living. Career staffers at FERC and career staffers at PHMSA do significant and detailed safety reviews, and these are often really exhaustive, time-consuming, and expensive processes for project applicants. And it's a responsibility, like I said, that to give folks assurance that this isn't a political process, this isn't something that a particular administration or chair of the commission can circumvent. This is the career staff that carries out this duty, this function. It's something they take very, very seriously. The career staff oftentimes pushes back on project applicants. I can remember, everything from evacuation plans to, in the event if something were to go wrong, project applicants have to account for every possibility. It is that thorough review. Hypothetical scenarios, anything you can think of, project applicants are subjected to that level of scrutiny to make sure that these are really, truly safe projects that are in the public interest if they're to be approved by the commission.
So I have a couple of questions. Just how many projects do you, or does FERC typically receive annually for approval on average?
It varies from year to year. Oftentimes, the process, as I mentioned, can take a number of years, particularly for these LNG export applications, because they're so detailed, because they're so long, and they take longer to review. There's probably far fewer LNG applications than there are, pipeline applications. Oftentimes, opponents of infrastructure disparage the commission and say it's a rubber stamp because the commission always approves projects. What they don't see is the project applications that are withdrawn, that aren't formally rejected by the commission, but project applicants understand in going through this exhaustive process that their project is not likely to pass muster with the commission, and they withdraw those applications. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but during my time, there were more than a dozen LNG export applications that we considered, but this was over a period of 3 or 4 years, because again, that's how comprehensive these applications are, and how long it takes to go through that process.
But less than a dozen. So the other thing I had a question about was, are you familiar at all with an LNG site that's in Boston? I guess it's an Everett LNG site.
I'm familiar with it. We've dealt with some issues around it on the power side, but I'm not familiar enough with the specifics around that facility. I had some interaction with it, but if my memory serves me right, it had to do with electric reliability issues and not, I didn't deal with any LNG specific issues.
Okay. Is there any major difference in the application process for an import-export facility versus just an export facility?
I can speak to, I didn't encounter an application for an import facility during my tenure at the commission. I can say that in my post-government life, I have dealt with our allies around the world who want U.S. LNG and are moving through their processes to build import facilities to be able to offtake U.S. LNG. But I didn't have an application for an import facility during my tenure at the commission.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for the task force members? No? All right, great. Thank you so much for your testimony today. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, and with that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you everyone for attending.